Chatty Hattie Leaper was the first African-American broadcaster on Charlotte, South Carolina radio. Born in 1934, Leaper grew up listening to the only station in town that played R&B and rock and roll. After a brief internship there in 1948, she gained a DJ position. Initially, Hattie Leaper didn't talk much between songs, but over time she developed her own style of witty banter that earned her the nickname Chatty. During her 18-year-long career in broadcasting, Leaper also earned a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's in education administration from the University of North Carolina. In 1985, she joined the faculty of Gaston College and was the chair of the broadcasting department until her retirement in 1998. I was a happy camper because I knew broadcasting was the job for me. Maree Narada was the first female radio announcer in Ireland, Britain, and possibly the first in Europe. She was born in 1896 in Kilmaley, Ireland. While at university, Narada became a member of Common Numan and Conrad ní Gaeilge and was jailed in 1921 for selling Republican flags. In 1926, she became a women and children's program writer and producer on radio station 2RN, the first radio station in the Irish Free State. Within 3 years, she rose to be the station's principal announcer. She went on to have a long career in both radio and theater. Her play Micheál won an Abbey Theatre Award. Maree Narada died in 1971. Before Mary Costigan became the first woman in Arizona and the second woman in the world to obtain a broadcasting license, Costigan owned and operated a successful flower shop, as well as a popular beauty salon in Flagstaff, Arizona. After selling both businesses at a profit, she launched the radio station KFXY from a back room of Flagstaff's Orpheum Theater. After 4 years at the Orpheum, she moved KFXY to the Monte Vista Hotel, where she broadcast for 3 hours a day at 100 watts. In addition to operating the station, Costigan continued to run the Orpheum Theater and worked hard to make Flagstaff a destination for tourists and celebrities. She sold KFXY and moved to California, where she lived until her death in 1960. Mavis Moyo was born in 1929 and grew up in the village of Matabeleland. There she worked as a teacher until 1954, when she was hired as a replacement at the RBC radio station. Initially, her work entailed reading for a women's program called Radio Homecraft Club. Later, when there was an announcer vacancy, she stepped into that position. For many years, Moyo was one of the very few women broadcasters, black or white, in colonial Zimbabwe, and she was the very first woman to read the news on the Rhodesian Broadcasting Corporation. By 1982, Moyo had spearheaded the ZBC's Radio 4, which was dedicated to education and rural development. I realized that radio was a powerful tool of communication. I could teach the whole country. Mavis Moyo works as a consultant and sits on several media boards. Radio Femenina was a radio station in Montevideo, Uruguay, that launched in October of 1935. Beaming its signal from Montevideo and across the river into Argentina, it was the first all-women format radio station in the Western Hemisphere, programming by and for women. The station became well known for its feminist and activist programming. In the early 1940s, the FBI became suspicious of this tiny station in Uruguay and claimed Radio Femenina's owner was a Nazi sympathizer. The station was blacklisted and immediately lost its license. By 1945, they regained their license and Radio Femenina returned to the airwaves, where they remained until 1973, when it was permanently shut down by a military coup. Welcome. You're listening to Radio for Divorced Women. With these words, Mahasan Sabir launched her very popular online radio station called Metalikat, Radio Divorcees, in 2010, Cairo, Egypt. The 49-year-old Cairo native began a blog, and later this radio station, after getting her own divorce. She uses her station to talk about the Byzantine institutions that regulate divorce in her country, and to provide a venue for women to talk about the discrimination Egyptian women experience. Conservatives see Sabir's broadcast as an invitation for women to rebel against their husbands, but supporters see the station as a place to raise public awareness of the psychological and social barriers that face women in Egypt. What man has done, women may do. Born in 1905, Oona Morrison was a Jamaican feminist activist and writer who created radio programs that dealt with racism, nationalism, and gender discrimination against women. During her early career, she worked on the editorial staff of the Jamaica Critic and then founded her own magazine titled The Cosmopolitan. In 1938, she moved to London and became the BBC's first black female writer-producer. She went on to produce the series Calling the West Indies. After George Orwell had Morrison read her poem Banjo Boy on his poetry magazine, she was inspired to create her own literary radio program for the West Indies titled Caribbean Voices. After the war, Oona Morrison returned to Jamaica in 1945 and remained there until her death in 1965.